Welcome to Private Politics, where we prepare you for your next political conversation. I'm Jeronimo Cortina, a political science professor at the University of Houston.
And I'm Brandon Rottinghaus, also a political science professor here at the University of Houston. It's been an exciting week this week, Jeronimo, in politics. Obviously, some of these things are going to come up in the weekend's festivities, so we're going to try to get you prepared for it. The big news of the week, obviously, is about what's happening in Washington, D.C., the shutdown politics. We're back to the 90s again, it seems. I'm happy about it because, obviously I'm an aficionado of the 90s, but not everyone's excited about it. So we're going to talk all about what that means for Washington and for you at the end. But let's first talk about some of the other things happening in Washington, D.C. this week. Well, obviously, it's not quite in D.C., but D.C. based because it's about the Republican debate in Simi Valley, California at the Reagan Library. It's been an exciting round so far. They've winnowed the field to 7 people. And once again, we're trying to figure out, who's on top here. So what do you make of the big picture here in terms of the state of the play for 2024?
Well, first of all, we have to talk about the big elephant in the room, and that's Donald Trump, right?
Right, who was not there, yes.
Exactly. And the issue is that his lead is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. 30 to 40 points. So he has the luxury to say, nope, I did go to Detroit to talk about the workers are striking in terms of the auto manufacturers, so on and so forth. So it's complicated in the sense of that. But yes, you're right. It's winning down, and that perhaps, could bring a closer, quote unquote, candidate towards Donald Trump and complicate things at the very, very, very end. But we are very far beyond that scenario.
That's true. I think you're right. I think it's really smart for Trump not to go to these debates because you can frankly only get yourself in trouble, right?
Yeah.
When you're the front runner, you want to minimize mistakes. And we all know that Donald Trump is prone to making these mistakes. And even if he doesn't think that they're mistakes.
Right.
The other thing is that, yes, going to Detroit, going to the heart of kind of working class America is like a stake through the vampire heart of the Democratic Party, right?
Yep.
And this has been something that Republicans have been trying to promote for a long time. They want to be the party of the working class. And honestly, because we're seeing this gravitation of people without college degrees to the Republican Party, it's a really smart play for them to be able to move in that direction. So I think Trump is wise to do that. The other thing I think it's worth noting is that although, of course, Trump is the front runner here, it's going to mean that you're going to get most of the slings and arrows. And we basically saw that that was true. One of the things we have seen more true is that a lot of these candidates are going after Donald Trump on abortion. So Ron DeSantis, who frankly has the most to lose here in all of these discussions, is attacking Donald Trump about his comments about abortion and the ban in Florida. So Florida has a 6-week abortion ban. Donald Trump called it terrible. DeSantis basically claps back and says that, Donald Trump said he was pro-life, and it doesn't look like he's as pro-life as he claimed to be. I think that's going to be a wedge that's useful for these other candidates to be able to say that Trump isn't the kind of candidate that you think of when you think of a conservative Republican. So that's going to be useful. But obviously, Joe Biden wasn't invited to the debate. It's a GOP debate, the presidential library of Ronald Reagan. If he stepped foot in there, he'd probably blow up into flames. But he did send a proxy, and that is Gavin Newsom, who's the California governor. This is good news for Joe Biden because Newsom and the White House have been at odds in some things. It's been friction, not just because they're both kind of heavyweights in the party, but there's also been some policy disagreement. So what do you make of kind of Newsom's invitation by the White House to go to be a proxy at this debate, and what does it mean for the big picture of 2024?
Well, there's also these in the context of what was reported this week that Gavin Newsom is going to debate Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Okay, yeah.
So there's a lot of speculation in which we academicians do not engage. But
no, of course not.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, as you button your ascot.
Exactly.
Yes.
But the issue here is that perhaps he's mending, some of those fences that were broken before on the one hand. And the other one is that perhaps they're preparing Newsom for something big coming up, whether next year or, you know, in a couple of more years.
Yeah, I think it's potentially dangerous for the Biden White House because they are struggling. The polling numbers for Joe Biden are not great.
Yeah.
They're not much better for Donald Trump, but for an incumbent president, the kind of lackluster support he's getting among Democrats is really discouraging. And to put Newsom out there is a kind of admission in some ways, I think, that there are other popular Democrats. That's not to say that like there's going to be a replacement, I don't think, right? But I think people like Kamala Harris are probably unhappy about this because like she's the heir apparent, right? And so that's definitely a kind of vibe at her, as well as the fact that, she's from California too. So like if we're going to elect a California Democrat, she's like, you're going to elect me.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a kind of admission that's problematic for the Biden White House. So we'll see how that plays out. We'll talk about that debate when it comes, but it's certainly interesting to see how this is shaking out on a national stage. Let's talk a little bit about some other events that are taking place in Washington, D.C. this week, including from the land of New Jersey. Senator Bob Menendez, who is a senior senator from New Jersey, and his wife have been indicted on federal bribery charges. The couple has been accused of accepting several $100,000 in bribes in exchange for using the senator's power and influence to basically sway American foreign policy more towards Egypt and to benefit three New Jersey businessmen. Jeronimo, the brazenness on this would even shock people from New Jersey. Basically, the bribes included cash, gold, and payments toward a home mortgage and other things of value. The senator has got basically almost $500,000 in cash hidden away. There's a safe deposit box full of gold bars. Like, it is out of a movie.
Yeah.
I've studied scandal for a long time, and this is a doozy. So what do you make of, like, how this is all going to shake out? He clearly has suggested he is innocent. He said that this is something that he did because he sort of have, this kind of, mentality from it being his family we were refugees from Cuba. And so this is why he collected all of this. But what about, like, the luxury car? Is that something you take from Cuba with you?
You cannot defend this, right? I mean, either or you can make whatever story you want.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have the receipts of the $480,000 or how you got more than $100,000 in gold bars, it's like indefensible. So perhaps right now he's trying to, find a shipwreck in the coast of the North Atlantic coast and say, I dove down.
I was diving.
Because, and
I saw something shiny.
And pick it up,
it.
and that's it. But I mean, it's something that it has no escape, whatever it is. And I think this is going to go down bad for New Jersey Senator Menendez. Also within New Jersey, there have been some voices, right, of members of Congress that said, like, you need to step aside, like, right now.
Yeah.
And eventually this could have potential implications for 24, right? I mean, not only in terms of New Jersey, but in thinking about the presidential race.
That's a good point.
So I think that DOJ is going to go full force, full throttle, and trying to get, an indictment, pretty serious.
And they did. This is the second time that Senator Menendez has been indicted. He didn't get a verdict in the last case because the jury wasn't able to reach a verdict, but this definitely is going to be a problem. So maybe the second time is a charm here. But one thing is for sure, that they've got him dead to rights, they say. The evidence is very specific. They've got Google searches, literally, of them Google searching how much is a gold bar worth. So in short, if you're caught in such a scenario, don't Google stuff. You're going to have to find it the old-fashioned way. Go to the encyclopedia.
Go to the library.
Go to the library. But so I think the other part of this, obviously, you're right, there's going to be serious implications for 2024. Right. But this is also in keeping with how we've talked about scandal in the last couple of years, where scandals don't matter as much as they used to. This would have shamed any politician anywhere else. And you've got, his friends abandoning him. New Jersey politics is basically cratering right underneath him. And he's saying, I'm going to stay and fight, right? These charges are baseless. In fact, just like last time he was indicted, he said, well, this is basically like, my enemy's out to get me. The powers that be are, trying to see me as an obstacle, and I want to get around it. I'm not sure, but obviously he fighting these charges is definitely in keeping with how we've seen how scandal unfolds in the last few years. So it's interesting to see how partisanship has really kept things pretty rigid. Speaking of rigidity the U.S. Senate, the Senate has effectively stopped enforcing a dress code.
Tell us informal dress code.
Informal dress code.
Yes.
Tell us why.
So Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said that the staff from the Chamber's Surgeon at Arms will no longer be tasked with enforcing a dress code on the Senate floor. And that means, for some senators wearing, a tie and a suit or a jacket. For the senators, just whatever, slacks, blouse, or, a dress or whatever, right? So this happened because Pennsylvania's Senator John Fetterman unapologetically wears his trademark hoodie and shorts to perform his duties as senator. So it was, I guess, a way to accommodate Senator Fetterman dress code.
Dress his informal dress code.
And obviously this has become once again a political battle in terms of the Senate is going down in flames, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. And it's not just the, Republicans who are angry at the Democrats for this. The Democrats themselves want to enforce this dress code. Their argument basically is that, this is a serious place where serious things are done, in not the least of which is literally sending people into harm's way for their service to their country. That's a pretty heavy duty, and maybe we should do it in more proper attire than like gym shorts and like a wrapped Eagles T-shirt that, that maybe is coming, because that's what the Washington Post said in response to this. They said that it's only a matter of time before people start wearing,
flip-flops.
Crocs. Or what they said was inflammatory partisan messages, right? Where, you have some kind of a statement you want to make, and you have a T-shirt that is going to accommodate that. So I think obviously there's some serious concern about how this is gonna go down.
And I'm all for dress codes. Look at us,
You're the sharpest dresser that I know. So of course you're going to disagree with it. But our students come to class certainly less well dressed than any of this. But and they dress for comfort, as does.
Yeah, but it's a different. I get it, right? It's a different thing. But one thing it's wearing Crocs to high school or here at the university, and one thing would be wearing Crocs at the U.S. Senate with the little things that you
little
put
tabs
on
it.
the two little tabs, and I think it's too much. I think I'm for
a little bit more sartorial.
Dress codes have changed after the pandemic, granted, right? But you cannot go to work on your pajamas.
I agree. The only thing I'll say on the end of this is that Fetterman obviously kind of represents that kind of working class sort of voter, and I like that about it. I think that he's real. He is a true person.
Absolutely.
And so it's nice to see people expressing themselves in that way. But I don't want to see him wearing an Eagles T-shirt on the Senate floor. That would be a bridge too far.
I agree.
Well, this is Party Politics. I'm Brandon. This is Jeronimo. We're talking all about the state of play in politics. Let's talk about Texas, because there's been some interesting developments this week. One of the biggest was that the mayor of Dallas, Eric Johnson, who was formerly elected as a Democrat to the Texas House, has decided he's switching parties. He's going to become a Republican. Now, while the Republican Party is basically, in a modern sense in Texas, built on party switchers, this was kind of a big news. So what do you think about what the implications are for him switching parties?
Well, he has, to a certain extent, hinted that, he was not pretty much aligned with some of the Democratic Party's policies. You can see that, for example, in terms of how the city tried to pass a budget, that it was too much, no property tax relief for Dallas residents, so on and so forth. The other signal might be that he's trying to look and position himself for a statewide run, right? And the only way that you can do that so far, given previous data and 11,000 billion elections so far is that you have to be a Republican to win a statewide election.
Right. It's only been 170 consecutive wins.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure that at some point the Democrats are going to do well, but
absolutely,
that's going to be big news. That's going to be the real big news.
That's the history of the state, right? It's a one-party state because Democrats, were in power for more than 100 years. Republicans, so we see that transition, and that's normal. And finally, I mean, it's very odd, and I want to know your thoughts about this. Is Dallas is suddenly Democratic? It's like super Democratic.
Very.
So I don't know.
Right.
Biden won in 2020 by more than 30 percentage points.
Yeah.
So, does this make sense to you? I don't understand.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, he's going to be pretty lonely. Obviously, there aren't many Republicans left in Dallas, at least that are elected. Of the 14 state reps in Dallas County, only 2 are Republican. It does, though, put him as the basically biggest city Republican mayor, and that's something that's good for him in terms of eyeballs, right? Because you need to have that momentum. But to be honest, it's going to be tough for him to get out of a Republican primary. As a former Democrat, he's taken hundreds of votes that are going to make it look like he's much more Democratic than Republican. And so I'm not sure this is like a recipe for him to win statewide, especially as the party or Republican Party shifts more to the right. The other thing is that honestly, he's been kind of an absentee mayor. He's missed hundreds of council votes. That's been an issue that the Dallas News has reported. And, he hasn't been that instrumental in Dallas, actually, because his voice has been sort of marginalized. Dallas is a weak mayor system. It's a strong council system.
Right.
Basically, the city manager, like most Texas cities, runs the city. And they voted for the budget, like you said, over his objections. And so in some sense, like his irrelevance is now probably even lessened in Dallas because of this. So I think he's put himself into a bit of a political bind here. And I'm just not sure it's politically going to be that useful for him moving forward. But we will see. Obviously, the GOP is crowing about this, right? Saying that, we've turned one of these, major figures. So that's useful for them. But obviously, I think for him, I'm not sure it's going to move that far. But let's talk about the rest of some of the political trends that we've seen this week. This week in particular, a member of South Texas's prominent families is running for a seat in the Texas House. Rosie Cuellar has confirmed that she's going to run for House District 80, which is being vacated by Tracy King. This is a pretty swingy district. She is the sister of U.S. Representative Henry Cuellar from Laredo. So what do you make about this? Do you think this is a seat that Democrats can now keep, or is this still going to be Republican territory and hard to hold?
Well, it's hard to say, but, the Cuellars have very strong political presence, right? And we have seen, especially in the past re-election of Representative Cuellar, that he won, despite some charges from, the more progressive aisle of the Democratic Party. So we'll see. I think that, is going to be important. Her other brother is the Webb County sheriff. So, there is a lot of presence. There is a lot of political capital there. So I think that, if Republicans want to change or shift that district, it's going to take a lot of effort. So I don't know if they're willing to do that in terms of, swinging it or not.
This is the only House district that Greg Abbott carried from the opposite party. So if Abbott's popular, this could make it hard for the Democrats to keep it. So we'll see. That's going to be something we continue to monitor. Another thing we continue to monitor is the ongoing blowback from the Paxton impeachment. During an interview with Tucker Carlson, Ken Paxton lashed out at the Texas House and at U.S. Senator John Cornyn. Do you think that we're going to see a primary matchup between Paxton and Cornyn in the future?
Well, according to A.G. Paxton, he said that everything's on the table.
Okay. Wow.
So we don't know. But Senator Cornyn has been on the sides of the more conservative wing of the Republican Party, because Senator Cornyn has worked in bipartisan deals. He was involved in controversial "quote unquote" legislation regarding firearms, so on and so forth. So could be, but also A.G. Paxton is going, after everybody.
Also,
in Collin County.
he wants to get paid too. He says that the controller should have paid him for the time he was suspended from office. The controller says, no, we don't pay you. That's not the way this works. Also, the whistleblowers are still asking for their money, right? Yeah. In some ways, I see this impeachment as the beginning rather than an end. Like, the legal troubles for the Attorney General continue. The political fallout continues. Like you said, I think that's going to be something we'll have to watch. This is definitely, an issue that's going to divide the party. I think buried in a lot of this is that you see here that Dan Patrick said he was going to run for re-election. That kind of buried the lead a little bit in all this, but he is running again, which is pretty surprising. So there's a lot of stuff swirling around here, not the least of which, of course, is that we're going to probably have a special session where if they're fighting, it's going to make it hard to get things done. What do you take of sort of the week after the impeachment, like, and where the dust is settled?
Well, I mean, as you say, there's one thing, as we said last week, trying to be able to campaign again, but this one is trying to stay out of jail. And as you said, is a federal case. They are very careful about those things. So yeah, he's not out of hot water. Yeah. His national prominence has increased dramatically, but in Texas, not very sure. Yeah. Right? In Texas, he's not very sure how he's going to recoup that perhaps positive momentum that he had before. Yeah. And then he's going against everyone everywhere.
Looks like he's going to make T-shirts. Paxton versus everyone.
Some state representatives, have responded into X, formerly known as Twitter.
Oh, indeed. I think I heard about that. Yeah.
Saying, like, we're waiting. Yeah. Like,
actually, I think they're calling his bluff a little bit. I'm not sure that this has legs too far beyond, like, the sort of very corner of the Republican primary, right? Some people really care about this, but most people don't. Yeah. So I don't know that this is going to be the hill that many of them are going to die on. So we'll see how it plays out. But the tension that produced for the big three is going to be problematic in terms of legislating. So we'll see that when we get there. But speaking of tension, the big news of the week is that we are in the middle of an infinity war. Basically, this friction in Washington has created this pause for a showdown, and that's definitely wreaked havoc with the federal budget. Give me your sense of kind of why we're at this point and how politically this is going to play out in the next, few months.
Well, it's very simple. It's, the battle of Kevin McCarthy to trying to keep his job. And the issue here is that becoming a speaker, he made a lot of concessions, right, to the most conservative, wing of the Republican Party in Congress. Yeah. And basically he's eternal hostage forever. So remember that they just need one vote to have a resolution to basically, boot out Speaker McCarthy.
Which is a body blow for a speaker, right? It just basically is a display for everybody that you don't have control of your caucus or of the chamber.
Right, because the problem is that McCarthy doesn't have any support from the Democrats as of now.
Right.
And he has some votes from more traditional Republicans, but zero support from these MAGA wing, right? So he needs those votes. Yeah. And if he wants to pass a stopping gap or any sort of legislation, he needs Democrats. Yeah. And if he goes out to the Democrats, right, Matt Gaetz, Representative Matt Gaetz, is going to have that resolution, get him out of the job. So
he may as well keep walking because they're going to remove him. Yeah, for even talking to the Democrats. Yeah, it's funny because, as you said, like, any one motion to vacate the chair is a problem. And Matt Gaetz apparently left his copy of this, which he printed out, I guess, in his office in the bathroom with an iced coffee, which is uncool. You need to throw that away. Probably throw all of it away just for, kind of messaging purposes. But yes, he's the right flank has been the real problem for the speaker. And he also, though, has a problem with the other Republicans, right? Mitch McConnell on the Senate side is saying, let's get this done. Let's pass a resolution and move forward. You know, obviously they'd like to do that. McCarthy wants to have something that's, you know, passable that, you know, he can get some agreement on, but that's become a real problem. But I want to talk about what the public feels about this, right? A shutdown is a real problem for a lot of people. Things are going to get delayed, immigration type issues. You've got, you know, some of the sort of means-tested programs are going to slow down. These are all problems, but the public is having to kind of face this, right? We did it in the 90s, like we said. Right. We had it 2013, 2018, 19. What is the public's kind of view of this? Who's to be blamed for all this friction in Washington?
Well, I mean, given I guess in the polarization area in which we live, you know, Democrats are going to blame Republicans and Republicans are going to blame Democrats. Yeah. So that's how it's going to be, right? The fact of the matter is that it's more complicated. The fact of the matter is that, yes, our debt keeps growing and growing and growing. So some measures, you know, perhaps like Bill Clinton did back in the day, right, to balance the budget and have a decent budget is necessary. But, you know, it's a partisan issue. Yeah. So that's what's going to happen. And, you know, a lot of federal employees are going to suffer. Yeah. It's like, no, they should not suffer because of politics. It's
and the thing
insane.
Is, like there was an agreement to make this happen, right? Yeah. Like they already tentatively did this. Right. But then, of course, the politics of this changes and we see it being pulled apart. The public is not happy. Yeah, they see it as a partisan issue. And I think the problem for the GOP is that they could be perceived as the party that's basically just burning it all down, right? You've got Tommy Tuberville, who's holding up military promotions. Yep. You've got this where the right wing is saying, like, we're going to pull down the entire government. It just creates this problem. And I think the Democrats are willing to let them go so far with this to kind of hang themselves. But it's going to affect a lot of people. And that's, as you said, a real problem. So we'll keep an eye on this as it goes. And obviously, we can't solve partisanship this week.
Exactly. But we're going to keep a tabs on these and many other matters next week. I'm Jeronimo Cortina.
And I'm Brandon Rottinghaus. The conversation continues next week.